Welcome to the 30-minute hour. It's the personal development podcast for the seven-figure entrepreneur who's looking to level up and become unstoppable. I'm your host, Eric Twiggs, your procrastination prevention partner who's conducted over 28,000 coaching sessions with seven-figure entrepreneurs. Also joining me, you know him as the super CEO, the business strategist extraordinaire, and all-around good guy, Ted Fells.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. So good to be here.
That's right. It is indeed a happy Monday. And Ted, it's a happy Monday for these entrepreneurs who are watching us because they get to learn how to increase their pay by getting out of the way. You know how a lot of times you have a bottle and you have a bottleneck. Most of the time the bottleneck is always at the top of the bottle. And a lot of times with these organizations, the bottleneck is at the top. And once and that's a hard thing to know that, that you are the cause and potentially the solution to the potential problem. So this is a good opportunity. If you're looking to scale your business to the next level and really increase your pay, this is something you really want to lean in on and make sure you're taking notes. But this is not your everyday podcast. So we didn't get a chance to forewarn our guest that we do things a little different here. Yeah, this is a little different, but I think he's up to the task for sure.
I hope so. I'm a little nervous now. I wasn't nervous till now.
That was fine until you said that. But
yeah, this is great. I'm pumped.
We want to get you in first.
Yep. That's right. You hooked me in. Now I'm in, and now you can do whatever you want. So I'm on your show.
Let's go. Reel them in.
That's so great.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's get this party started. Again, we're talking about how to increase your pay by getting out of the way. So our guest of honor has worked in marketing, communications, and the sales sectors of business for over 20 years. He is the founder and CEO of Loan for Creative, a digital marketing agency, as well as a professional speaker and a sought-after business coach. Please join me in welcoming to the 30-minute hour podcast, Tyler Pigott.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for hooking me in and bringing me into the show.
Welcome.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's an honor to have you on, and I know we're going to talk about some great stuff. You really do some. I was doing my research, and so I try to, get what the customer is going to get and see that experience. And I can see why you're having the success you're having. I mean, you really have very intelligent lead strategy. So I'm hoping to get into that so our entrepreneurs could benefit from that as well. Before we go there, though, I do want to get some of the backdrop and the backstory for people that don't know you. So you were at the University of Washington as an undergraduate back in the day. What were your career plans at that time?
Oh man, I went to the University of Washington, and kind of in the midst of that, I was not like a school guy. Like I was not an academic. Didn't really I wasn't a book smart guy. Probably still not. But I started businesses earlier on, and when you're a teenager or whatnot, and you're making decent money because you started by whether it's landscaping or it's computer something at that point, or making a video or whatever it was, and kind of got the taste of that. And so didn't really think school was all that great, but I had an amazing professor. Well, I think I was maybe my second year in college, maybe my third year. And he used to produce all of ABC Sports Olympics, so the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics. And he kind of was just fascinating to me because he actually had a job outside of being a college professor, and it was relevant and it was kind of cool. And so he kind of hooked me into his broadcast program. And so I actually double majored, one in broadcast and one in communications back then, hoping to do something in like the TV space, like TV industry, kind of broadcast industry. And then realized pretty quickly that most of those jobs were in New York or LA. and didn't have a huge interest in living in either of those places. And I met a girl. So, that made everything take a left-hand turn. So that's what I was doing back then.
So you were the guy that was like selling T-shirts on campus and just you were that guy.
Well, I actually started when I was a junior in high school. I started a DJ company, and this was back in the day that you could, mix things onto a cassette. You could take 2 tracks and move them onto a cassette. You make like a mixtape or something. And so I DJ'd all the high school dances and parties, and then started getting in weddings, and kind of pretty quickly realized I could make a decent living and pay for school, pay for college, end the college debt free by working like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, kind of those evenings. And so I started a DJ company, and I bet I've DJ'd 300 or 400 weddings at this point, and tons of parties and all sorts of different things back then, before iTunes and Spotify, and you'd have to go to music stores, and hunt for the track that people wanted and that kind of thing. But that was what I was doing in college to make ends meet and make it so I didn't leave with a ton of debt.
There you go. And so what advice, if you could go back in time, knowing what you now know, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah. As far as like, call it like a early grad, just out of college kind of age for me, I think I probably would say or encourage people to start chasing bigger dreams earlier. I think oftentimes people spend, sometimes a decade in a career before they really kind of, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. And so I'd encourage people to chase their dreams bigger, those bigger dreams earlier. And then this is hard to do when you're younger, but I would encourage people to, and would have encouraged myself to really figure out who you are and what you're good at and what you like doing and what you want to be about, and just kind of stick to that. I think that so many people, including myself back in that time, just tried to fit a mold, into a career path or into a community or group of friends or whatever it was. And so I think it's kind of sounds funny, but it's just figure out what you want to be good at and kind of lean into that. And I feel like that would have been really beneficial for me earlier on. So that's probably what I'd say to myself, at least.
No, that's good stuff. 'Cause I think it's easy to kind of get down a path just because that's what you're supposed to do, or go down a path, right? And if you think you really want to be an accountant, I would tell spend time with somebody like, you think you want to be an accountant, spend the day with an accountant.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing that for the next 40 years?
Totally. Yeah. Yep. And then you realize it either yes or no. And I feel like you get to that pretty quick usually when you're, around somebody in that career path or area of focus. I feel like it answers a lot of questions really fast for people. So yeah, I think that's a great encouragement for people to do.
For sure. So you're the founder of this company, the Loan for Creative. Like, what exactly does your company do, and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah. All right. So I'm a problem solver kind of by nature, and have focused on kind of the marketing, sales, branding kind of sectors of business and solving problems in that industry. And so I've done that for the last 20 years, basically. And so I think for me, I worked on the kind of corporate side primarily until about 9 or 10 years ago when I started this. And I think saw an opportunity to really go and be able to kind of scale that ability to help people and ability to kind of solve problems. And so that translated over, the first kind of year and change of me jumping into my own thing to wanting to build a team for that and kind of having a vision for what that team could be. So that was kind of the, I guess, infancy stage of jumping into what I'm doing now. And then our company really focuses on kind of 2 different kind of phases or 2 different sections of the business. One is kind of that brand strategy. How do you talk about yourself, your positioning? How's that then rolled out onto all your kind of public facing materials, sales, marketing, websites, leave behinds, all sorts of different things you would need to communicate your message and the problem you fix and what makes you unique. And then the second part of the business is really amplifying that message. So call that lead generation, demand generation, trying to get more eyeballs on your business of the kind of specific customers you're trying to reach. Tons of campaigns, tactics, activities, all sorts of things, within that kind of lead generation side of things. But those are kind of like the 2 different sides that the business focuses on. And it's kind of split down the middle between the amount of work we do in each, generally. So.
Okay. And who do you consider your ideal client?
Yeah, it's a good question. Really companies that want to build their brand on HubSpot. So we're a HubSpot
Mm.
partner and spend a lot of time on the HubSpot platform. And so a lot of brands and companies that are really trying to look to scale the focus or scale the like size of their brands and needing a platform and automation and technology to help them with that. Specifically in that education support vertical. And so companies that sell to, professional development, sell to higher ed, sell to kind of academic education kind of systems and communities. So those kind of B2B type clients are what we're mainly focused on. Of course, like every business, you have a couple outliers, but that's what we're mainly focused on.
Okay. And so you help entrepreneurs to get out of their own way. Um, so first off, like what are some what are some ways that we get in our own way that you see?
Yeah. I would say that most entrepreneurs want to control everything.
Hmm.
And there's, rightly so in some ways, because oftentimes an entrepreneur might start something on their own. They're not starting it with a team of 50 or 100 or however many people are on their team. They're starting it by themselves. And so they do oftentimes have to get things in motion. I call it going from 0 to 1. And so they oftentimes have to do that themselves as they're used to relying on maybe their own skill sets or their own follow through or whatever it looks like. But then as you grow, you start that control or that desire to really have your hand in everything does slow you down and become, like you said earlier, that bottleneck of being able to grow and expand. And so I'd say that's the one thing I feel like I see on a regular basis is control and wanting to be your hand, like I say, your hand in everything that's going on in the company. And not really like allowing somebody else to run with it or really be able to pass off that task or that project or that kind of core responsibility in your company. And I would say that's the number one thing I feel like I see on a regular basis. Kind of follow up to that would be like communication hurdles. I feel like oftentimes entrepreneurs trying to grow something aren't the best at communicating detail. And so then they're only going to communicate part of what is needed, but then it would cause them to get frustrated that thing wasn't done well. But oftentimes it is traced back to what was communicated and kind of how it was presented or whatnot. And then I'd say the last piece is, and I'd say most entrepreneurs chase shiny things. And so, the idea of sticking with something long enough to see it succeed or learn from it so that the next, V2.0 or something could actually be better. Most entrepreneurs oftentimes are like, they're not focused long enough to see some like the results that they want. They kind of jump from it or chase something else and lose focus on it too quickly. So I don't know if that makes sense, but control being that first one, communication hurdles, and then kind of like that shiny object chasing syndrome.
Yeah, I saw a stat. You talk about communication. I saw a stat. It said that bad communication costs a typical company $11,000 per employee per day.
Yep.
On average.
Yep.
That you see you can agree based on all your interaction with companies. You can attest to that.
Oh my word! It's a fascinating when you're a service provider to companies, communication's all you got, and so that whether it's a deliverable they're expecting from us or it's a approval we're expecting from them or whatever it can be, so much can be lost in translation on that communication piece, and then you can lose time on that, which time usually a lot of stuff we're working on, time can be products sold and they're not selling as many products because of that we didn't launch it fast enough or whatever because of communication challenges, and that equals lost money. And sometimes for us too, if we're waiting on clients, we're not able to jump into the next project because we're having to wait on this project that's not launched yet, and then we could lose money from not being able to jump onto another project. And so I would totally agree. I think the communication can be a rough scenario for it for a lot of companies for sure if they're not great at it or not good at improving and iterating on it.
So also I want to talk about the shiny penny piece too. Is it is it a search for like a quick fix? Is it what is it with this whole shiny penny thing? Because I see it a lot in my work as well.
Yeah, I mean I've got opinions on it, obviously, but I think, oftentimes people starting organizations are builders. and they like to jump in and they want to build something. And so it's like that kind of 0 to 1 or 0 to 5 or whatever the number is. If you're trying to, if success is 10, they're building the beginning of it or getting it rolling or getting it in motion. And the minute it shifts to, call it maintenance, if you will, like you've kind of built it and now you're running plays, you're running a playbook to make it work. You can oftentimes it's just boring. Like you just lose interest because that's just not your personality or whatever, if you're an entrepreneur or a builder. And so I don't, you don't want to like penalize people because that's sometimes just how they're wired. They're wired to kind of build things and oftentimes miss that window of putting someone that's an operator or putting someone that kind of, is maybe more of a, hey, your goal is to continue the motion of this and I'm going to go then build the next thing. And they try to do it all themselves. And so they can oftentimes then go chase the next thing because they just are more attracted to, whether it can be building other areas of their company or other focuses. It can be, hey, I built this thing and now I'm going to go whatever, invest in this over here and build this thing. It could be a totally different project. But I think oftentimes that is what I see is just that people's wirings, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to build stuff. And so then once it switches away from building and it's more maintaining, there's just less interest. And so they naturally just kind of shift to something else. So it's not all bad. It's just, you've got to make sure you're watching out for that to know when to put somebody in place. I call it a shelf life. I feel like most entrepreneurs have a shelf life. And so at some point they go bad because, that's what they're really good at is not that maintenance piece or, like they're good at getting things in motion, but then once it's moving, they want to move on to the next thing because that's just what they're motivated by.
So Ted, I see you shaking your head. So Ted has had his company for 26 years. So
yeah,
love to hear your thought on this.
Totally.
The interesting thing about, in starting a company and, you usually, you say, hey, man, I'm really good at tech stuff and I love tech stuff. I want to, like you said, fix stuff. Like that was my thing, networking and putting computers together, making them communicate and cybersecurity, all that stuff. And then I'm going to get a company and that's what I'm going to do. And then you get the company and I don't do any of that. Like
Totally.
I'm in meetings, I'm coming up with strategy, I'm looking at ways to market our services. I'm dealing with people all the time, not the computers. I'm dealing with the people stuff.
Yeah.
And and you got to get to that place of, okay, you're shifting to you're not who you thought you were going to be in your company. There's someone else that you hired to be that person. Right. And it's tough. It's tough because you keep trying to go back to that. I have this saying, I call it like 7th floor and 12th floor. Like the 7th floor is like you just kind of in there and you're doing some stuff, fixing some stuff, connecting some stuff. And then 12th floor is just all strategy. Where's the whiteboard? Let's draw this up. This is where we're going. Here's our as is. Here's our to be. This is the roadmap of all of that. And you got to be, you got to be interested in making that change, because if you just kind of keep going back to that, you'll be fixing some stuff. But as far as growth and all of that, you're just not going to have much of that.
Yeah. No, I think somebody explained this to me a number of years ago, and it was actually really helpful. And it was kind of like that breakdown between founders and CEOs. And the founder's role is that visionary, that kind of, jump off the cliff, that take the risk because there's something that doesn't exist and they're trying to make it exist, and so they're kind of pushing it forward, where the CEO role is more of managing risk and making sure everything stays alive and making sure the best decision for the company. And like naturally, those have a lot of conflict. There's a lot of tension between those two roles. And so it's not that someone can't fill both of those, right? It's not that you can't do that, but just expect that tension if that's your wiring. And it's tough to also jump out of one of those. If, maybe I started as a founder and now I want to be the CEO or vice versa or something. And those are really, like I said, they're really kind of always at odds with each other based on kind of the natural wiring of those two roles. So I like your 7th floor versus 12th floor. I'm envisioning like, conference tables, meeting rooms. It's all fancy on the 12th floor, and the 7th floor is like getting stuff done. My sleeves are rolled up, it's
things are just moving down there. And in a small business, and oftentimes you're like constantly on that elevator between the 7th and the 12th floor, or you're or you're running up and down steps.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Like, because early on it's like, yeah, I'm just going to be back here doing strategy. Well, no, you're not, because it's just you now. Right. So you gotta bake the cookies.
Yeah.
Like, you got to make the cookies and then come up with the marketing plan to push those cookies.
Yeah.
But then, but you're in such a rush. Like, at some point early on, I can't wait till I get employee number 2, because that person's going to bake the cookies. And I'm going to go over here.
Yeah.
Need you here to help me with these cookies. Where are you going? Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Have you guys read the Michael Gerber's E-Myth book?
Yes, absolutely.
And he talks about pies. So his example in the whole book is talking about the tactician that makes the pies versus the manager versus the store owner, kind of like, then breaks down those roles. And he has a lot of great examples of really like looking yourself in the mirror kind of thing and go, well, who are you? And be okay with that. You don't not everyone has to be, top of the food chain, if you will, in a business. You might just be really good at, in your case, like computers, network, system admin, like you might just be really good at that. And so, hang out in that lane, and there's nothing wrong with that, and bring people in that kind of fill some of the other roles around it. Yeah. But it takes a lot of self-awareness for that, I feel like, and really digging into, like, naturally you'd go, cool, I started the company. I would continue to, elevate and delegate things below and bring people in, but that might not be the best fit, at some point, and really being able to kind of answer that for yourself, I think, is a challenge for most people. It is for me. I think it is probably for most people too.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's another book. It's called Rocket Fuel, and it kind of makes the distinction.
Dino's book.
You have the visionary and you have the integrator, right? So the visionary says, "Hey, we're going to the moon." And you're like, "How do you get there?" "I don't know. We're going to the moon. We'll make it. We're gonna make it happen." But the integrator is like, "Okay, if we're gonna go to the moon, we need to have the right size rocket. We need to make sure we've got qualified astronauts, and the rocket has to have fuel." So you need both. A lot of the great companies, you have that one person who's the visionary, then you have that other person who's really more in the to the tactics. So I think that's the key thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah.
Good stuff. So now, all right. So now we're starting to understand how we get in our own way, right? So what's the solution? What are some steps that we can take to get out of our own way and increase our pay?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, it's nuanced probably a little bit in every industry, right? Like, it's probably a little bit different for every industry. I think probably the thing that's helped me the most as I've grown in different organizations, different teams, is really to be pretty transparent and ask really good questions of the people that are around you. So that could be contractors, it could be family, it could be, employees, it could be any sort of people. Once you started to build your organization, some of the questions that I'd kind of recommend are like really just asking, hey, what am I the bottleneck on? What do you guys feel stuck on? What is it that you can't, what decisions can't you make unless I'm in the room or I'm part of the, evaluation? What do you need to ask me about before you move forward? Like, a lot of those kind of questions to really understand, really how you are in the way, because it's hard to increase your responsibility, which oftentimes can increase that pay if you're continue to carry so much of the weight of that organization or your department or whatever that is. And so having those transparent kind of questions, conversations, I think is really helpful to be aware of that kind of stuff. Sometimes you have to ask them of yourself of, I'm always playing the game of efficiencies. I'm always playing the game of, oh, I can systematize or process that or automate that. Okay, great. It's going to go over here. And then like on my calendar, I have it's called a frustration hour. And so I have a frustrations list on my phone, and I write down things that frustrate me. And it could be communication. It could be calendaring. It could be literally anything. It could be running to the grocery store. It could be whatever frustrates you. And then on every Friday, I just have an hour blocked on, and I just go, great, I'm going to start tackling some of the things that frustrate me and delegate them, write them out, how you do them, pass them off, whatever that looks like. But it helps you kind of get into your sweet spot a little bit more, like just a little bit more every week or every month. It's not a total career change or job description change, but it's a lot of those things that make you feel kind of bogged down. Because I think most people, if you have kind of gotten to a spot in your career where this is what I'm focused on, or what I'm good at, or kind of what your X factor is, or like your kind of secret weapon or your superpower, Every book you read has a different variation of how they describe that, but that kind of your superpower. The more things, the longer you get, the longer you stay in your career, your job, the more things like glom onto you or kind of attach to you, and your less of your superpower is actually being used. And so you really do have to focus pretty hard on how do you sift through the muck and the distractions and all the things, because most people at most companies, especially small business, have something. If they just did more of that, the company would be the next level successful, whatever that looks like for that company. And so I think that's like a big piece of, I guess, increasing your pay or getting on your own way is really just like sorting through the stuff that, hey, this doesn't matter and I don't need to work on this. I think, a couple of other things for that is like that focused piece. And this is another element to it. I think in 2018, I turned my iPhone, I just turned it, it's on DND all the time. And so like you can't call me unless you're on my favorites list, and I get texts from my kids and my wife, and that's the only thing that comes through. But it's helped me, be able to focus, and I choose when I engage. And so I'm just using that example. I've probably got 15 of those examples, but that's an example of me being able to stay focused on this is where I'm going, this is what I do, because everybody wants a piece of your time. No matter who you are, what role you have on a team. I'm not saying this based on running an organization or a team. That can be literally anybody, because you're just trying to like offload. Everyone's trying to like get things out of their, off their plate and pass it to somebody else and give somebody else the responsibility. And so the more focused you can stay in kind of your lane, I think that generally the more successful you are, because you're accomplishing the right things versus getting distracted by some of the wrong things. And that takes time to sort through for sure.
That's interesting, Eric. You may remember past guest Walter Jones talked about that, where he said when he starts off in the morning, like the first hour or so, he just kind of tasking, giving out tasks. Yeah. He's not reading any emails or people asking something from him. It's like he just starts off his day kind of on offense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
that's good. And you said, I've never heard it put this way, the idea of the frustrations hour. We just make a list of all your so yeah. I'm understanding you correctly. So you take an hour, you just think of everything that frustrates you, put it down on paper, and then you got time blocked off in your calendar on Friday to go through the frustrations.
Yeah, so I'm literally have my list on my phone, and it's so throughout the week, throughout the weekend, whatever, if I think of something and it causes like a frustration, I'll throw it on my phone. And so that's going to be 5 seconds or whatever it is to just jot down a quick thought or an audio note or whatever. And then throughout the week, like at the end of the week or whenever it is on someone's schedule, you've got like a block on your calendar. No one can schedule over it. It takes a little bit of discipline to focus on it, but then go to your list that you're keeping and pick some things off. Just go, oh, I don't like doing that, or how do I not have to do that again, or those types of things. And they can be big, they can be small, but at least then every week I'm kind of chipping away at some of those things that probably suck my energy or make it so I'm not as productive or whatever the kind of byproduct of that is. But that's been really helpful for me. It started with, this was a number of years ago, reading, the Stephen Covey book, where there's the quadrants. And there's those different quadrants, and you kind of place your task. Yeah, it's in 7 Habits. That's right. Uh-huh. And it's kind of like each quadrant, to think of like a grid, and there's 4 quadrants, and each quadrant's kind of like hey, you're good at this and you like it. You're good at this, you don't like it. You are bad at this and you don't like it. Kind of like just breaks those off. And then I used to every quarter go through and redo that. And so I'd go, what are all the things I'm working on? And then I'd place them in there. And then like the things that I wasn't good at and I didn't like doing, I'd go, I'm going to hire a person or a contractor or a VA or whatever the service is that would help me kind of chip those things away. And that's gotten harder as I've grown teams and the company's gotten bigger. And so now I think this frustrations list helps me just chip away at things a little bit more frequently, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
I'm just thinking of my frustrations list as we speak. And it's
Eric has left the podcast and he's just it's okay. It's okay.
Ted may have to ask you the next few questions because I got frustrations on my mind here now.
Yeah, totally.
No, I think that's a fantastic idea, and that I'm going to add a variation of that to my own personal thing. Glad you
Totally. Yeah,
brought
make
that
it. I
up.
mean, I think I probably stole it from someone at some point and made it my own and have my own way of doing it. Um, but I think one of the things that's helpful for that is, there's always things that kind of frustrate you, and if there's any way that the next time that thing happened, at least maybe it's a little bit less or a little bit less frustration. I think it's really encouraging because there's so many things, as you guys know, running an organization. Probably every day you've got some sort of staggering news that kind of sucks and it might not be great. And so if you can start to chip away at some of those types of things, I think it can be really helpful. But just for me personally, it's just helpful. Like mentally, it's helpful because at least you feel like you're taking some ground and some of those things that might be annoying or irritating or something. So
And then writing it down gets it out of your head. You
yeah,
know, gets it out of your head. Now you can just move forward.
yeah.
So I mean, you've got an excellent model that where you use to help people. What's a memorable client story that you have? Someone who succeeded by applying your model.
Yeah. I mean, kind of earlier on, so this was probably 12, 13 years ago, I worked for an investment group and launched a CPG brand. And so we launched a consumer beverage product and ran it through a test market, built a brand, user groups, professional athletes, rolled it up and down all the grocery stores on the West Coast. Kind of took about 4 or 5 years to do that. And that one was really fun because of the model really was just how can we just help more people? And so it was, we believed our product helped people. And so then it was how can we get it to those people and go through non-traditional channels and be creative with it. And we partnered with a lot of distributors and like grocery stores and some of those kind of distribution channels, with the idea of, hey, how can we help you move more of your product that you're trying to sell into different stores versus most people are doing the opposite of how can you help me sell more of my product. And I feel like that company took off or that product took off pretty well because of that kind of mentality, which was really helpful. I'm trying to think of like stories that stand out like in the last kind of 5, 6 years of running this organization. I mean, it is how we model all of our engagements. And so it is really just, hey, how can we help and serve and support our clients? From, hey, like we work with, we have a client we've had for a long time that's a big senior and assisted living community. And when we first started with them, they were, had a couple properties and they were marginally, occupied kind of thing. And we helped them grow lists and they've now built more properties and now they're all full. And, but a lot of that has been just, hey, how can we help? And, we come with strategies and ideas and all sorts of things, but it's more so what's the burning thing that they're trying to figure out. And whether that's helping them automate some of their tour signups or it's, it's the, hey, you did you could use text messaging to communicate during COVID or something? And it's calling them and asking, how can we help? How can we help? How can we help? And so I just would say like that model has been really, really good for our business. And then also it's been fun because it's attracted really incredible people that I get to work with every day because that's their kind of, I guess, heartbeat as well, if you will, just to help people and serve where they can, and use kind of some of their skill sets and talents that they've developed to just help push other businesses and other brands forward. So that's not like a specific example, I guess, or I guess there's a couple kind of intertwined in there. But a lot of it's just, I guess, like a servant mentality kind of concept, if that makes sense.
Oh, sure.
In a business model, whereas in so many other businesses, I feel like, hey, this is what we sell, and this needs to force fit into your, setup, and that doesn't always work for the person receiving it. And so I think allowing us to do that and just really come with like that help first kind of mentality and add value first, has been super beneficial for us for sure.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that you're most proud of about yourself that people don't know about you?
Huh. One thing that I'm the most proud of myself that people don't know. Well, first off, I've been married for 20 years and love my wife still, and that's been awesome. So that's for sure on there. I've got 2 teenage daughters. That's been incredible. They're kind of the reason I get out of bed every morning and why I try to build something and have something to pass off. So that's like 100%. in addition to that, and you said one, but I'm going to give you two. That one's incredible. There's nothing that really holds a candle to that. But the second one, probably for me, that I'm the most proud of that people might not know, is growing up, I was in part of an entrepreneurial family. So my dad started a business kind of roughly probably when I was born or something around that time frame, and ran it for about 25 years. Grew it up to about 600 employees and numerous locations, about 13 locations, and was I would say successful for how you kind of from outside looking in. And but that business kind of folded at the beginning, kind of around 2000, maybe around probably about 2000, 2001. And I remember getting I was in college, finishing up college at that point, and getting a phone call saying, "Hey, this is what's going on, and we're liquidating absolutely everything so we can pay for whatever's left and write last checks for employees and all those types of things." And so probably for me, I take a lot of pride in really starting from scratch and starting over and having to, figure everything out from zero, and not really having, there's been a lot of amazing things that have, and people that have come alongside of me and given me opportunities, and I'm super thankful for all those. But I think just like that, I didn't necessarily have a platform to jump from like some might. And by no means am I going, I wish I would have had that, because I'm super thankful for the cards I was dealt, I suppose, because it's really built a lot of grit and determination and resilience in my personality to go through things. But I think that's probably, for me, one of the things I take the most pride in and I'm proud of, is just that ability to kind of start from nothing. And, I suppose people might not know that. So that's why I'm sharing it, because I'm trying to think of things that people don't know. So
that's incredible. I mean, so you were in college when this happened.
Yeah.
So you had to basically figure it out and finish funding the rest of your education.
Yeah. Like the next day.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, it was, I've worked full time since then, and that was like, pay for school, pay for housing, food, like all those types of things, and kind of right away. So, and like you kind of look at that going, wow, that's crazy. But I also go, man, I wouldn't be where I'm at now if I didn't have that, because I learned, you learn how to work real hard, real quick, because you get a little bit of that a little more like that desperate spot, where you're just going, hey, I need this to happen by this date so that I can pay rent in this apartment, or I can, pay for food this month, or an electric bill, or whatever, like all the different things that you have to do that oftentimes don't adjust until you maybe are a couple of years out of college, at least for some people. So I feel like I jumped into that quick, and it's been an adventure since then, like everyone's life. So
that's great. Ted has this metaphor of being locked in a room. I'll let you tell it, Ted. We talk about this all the time. It has everything to do with what you just said, Tyler.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's like you're locked in a room and you got to get out. Like, it doesn't really matter as much at that moment how you got in there, right? Oh man, how did this happen? This shouldn't have happened. And but you got to get out though, Tyler. You got to get out. So, everything was going a certain way for you, and then it's like, okay, what you gonna do? You can go to the door and try to get out, but if that doesn't work, right, then what? You can call someone, you can text someone. Last thing you're gonna do is look out the window and jump, right? You've had to exhausted every possible thing before you say, okay, let me jump. Unless you're on the first floor. If you're on the first floor or something, you could probably do it. But other than that, just the last option. But yeah, when you have that moment, and then when you're able to get through that, then everything is like that, right? It's like, okay, well, how do I get out this room? How do I get out this room? And it's interesting. I listen to people on my team, and I'm like, oh, well, we can't. We don't have any experience doing X, Y, Z. I'm like, when I started to come in, I didn't have any experience in anything. I didn't have any experience in anything. Totally. So not having the experience, we don't have the budget. I started with no budget, right? So budget, what is that?
Yeah,
like you gotta figure it out. And I think once you get to that point, like then there's nothing that can stop you in your business, right? Because you're always going to be like, okay, I gotta figure it out. What am I gonna do? Like, it's my faith and my hustle, right? Those two things together, that's what it is. You got your faith and you got your hustle. Right.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta have them both. Right? You got faith, but you're gonna hustle. Then
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
sit
there's
here. I got this faith.
you
I got this
lean
faith.
on one versus the other. Like
That's
they're
it.
always gonna be pinging back and forth.
I got this faith that someone's gonna come here and open this door for me and get me out of here at some point. And a
Yeah.
month goes by, and you're like, man, where is that someone? Right? That
Totally.
hustle's gonna be like, okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm
Yeah.
digging through
Mhm.
ceilings or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it like there's a weird like almost hope in it though, because it does allow you to rely on that ability to where you go, I've been in here before, meaning I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to figure this out and I know I'm going to figure out how to get out of here. You know, the door's locked and I can't figure out how to leave. But when you build that muscle, you are able to rely on it. Like I remember distinctively, like in the beginning of kind of, I hate to bring up COVID again because it doesn't feel like it exists anymore, but in the beginning months of that, there was fear. People were scared of this or that, or what's going to happen, and business wise the same. And I think when you're able to go, that will be fine. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out what people need. We'll, reinvent the business if we have to. We'll, like maybe you don't want to, but that's different, whereas when you've got that faith, that hustle, that drive, that kind of mindset that you can lean into, I think I don't know. I feel like it's super powerful, and I think most entrepreneurs can relate to it in some way, shape, or form. So,
Oh, for sure, for
yeah.
sure. All right. So you're always getting asked for advice, right? Whether it's on a podcast, whether it's one of your clients, like what's the one question you never get asked that you wish people would ask you?
I think probably like I don't know about a specific question. Probably something around like everyone in the marketing space, like on the client side, is always shopping for the silver bullet. And man, I wish people would just ask questions around, hey, does that silver bullet exist? Or how can you prep me to be, prepared when I'm jumping into whatever this marketing campaign or this brand awareness campaign, and how long it's going to take and all those types of things. Because I don't know the exact question, but it's probably something around that kind of topic or theme. Because of the amount of times that people just assume they come to a marketing agency or they come hire a marketer or whatever, and they don't get exactly what they thought, but they don't oftentimes realize that, marketing can take months, years to kind of build. And it's a constant effort. And, speaking of faith and hustle, there's a lot of that that's built into marketing because platforms change or algorithms change or channels change or referrals change or so many different things can change so quickly. So it's probably, if I were to say like question wise, it's something around that, like what expectations should I set or what mentality should I come into marketing with, and probably something along those lines.
What mentality should I come into marketing with? That would be a great question. Because nobody, they think, right? If I go, I say, I'm going to deal with this marketing company. I'm thinking, okay, I can check the box, right? I've got Tyler.
Yeah.
Good. I'm good. I'm good now.
I'm good. I got Tyler. But you're saying I should ask, okay, what's the mindset that I need to have to make this work?
Yeah. And because I think like, so many people come in with just like this preconceived, like, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. So whether it's, content and SEO, whether it's paid media, whether it's events or what, like there's tons of different kind of channels or campaigns. The thing that they most of the time don't think about is that there's probably 6,000 other businesses that do the exact same thing you did. They're all competing for the same thing. And so if none of them existed, then yeah, absolutely. I'll sell you this exact playbook and it'll run every time. But most of them don't take into account there's several thousand people doing the same thing that they're doing. And so now you're all competing for that crowded space. And then all of a sudden, a search engine changes their algorithms like Google sometimes does 600 times a year. And so then it's, this worked last week when we ran it for this client, but it doesn't work this week or something. And so, I just think the idea of having that more transparent conversation, and we try to, it's just oftentimes, clients don't want to hear that or they don't want to talk about it or their expectation is kind of like, the silver bullet kind of mentality. So I think that mindset or like how you'd approach marketing or like kind of talking and being more realistic about what you're asking. It's not a bookkeeping question in accounting where you're just solving a math problem. It is a lot more complex than that. So I think that might help, I guess, maybe help manage expectations / help who to look for and personality traits and those types of things in the mix of it. So I've not really thought about that a ton, but that's probably the question that people ask.
No, that's great. That's great. So we're at the final segment of the show. It's called Write This Down. And this is
Yeah.
where we each go around and leave at least one takeaway from today's episode that we want people to write down so they can level up.
Hmm.
All right, Tyler, you're the guest of honor. What should the people write down?
Okay, so I was thinking about this kind of like concept and trying to figure out like, okay, so what would the takeaway be? But I wasn't looking at it from a takeaway from today. I feel like we've talked about a bunch of different things today. What the one thing that I'm thinking about is that direction is more important than speed. And so figure out where you want to go. I think in this day and age, so many people just want to check stuff off. I just want to move. I just want to get there. I don't have a ton of, attention span's really short. I just, I want to get there. And you don't spend a ton of time thinking about, well, where do you want to go? Where do you want to end up? And I think from a career standpoint, it's decent advice. Like it's decent to go, well, what do you want to do in 10 years or 5 years or 3 years or whatever it is? And then how do you set yourself up for that? Versus I feel like a lot of people go, how do I make a paycheck that supports my living or support, my standard of living, which isn't bad. It just then oftentimes those people might not be happy with what they're doing or kind of miss the mark maybe on where they're trying to go to because they're not thinking about it super clearly. So that direction piece is more important than speed is kind of my takeaway, I think.
No, that's great. Direction is more important than speed. Definitely write that down. All right, Ted.
Yeah, that's a tough one to follow, Tyler. So thanks.
Well, you said I could go first. I mean,
Yeah. This Eric sets me up with this all the time. He puts me behind our great guests, and then they come out with stuff, and they're already like, have had a running start. They've been just blowing,
totally.
just throwing
Yeah,
out this
I'm already
nuggets
on the freeway. I already have the on
you're
ramp.
ready. You're ready. I'm like, okay, Ted, what you got? Yeah, I mean, I just think that one of the things when it comes to to marketing, I think you had mentioned this. It's not cookie cutter, right? My grandmother used to say this. I guess I got to be careful saying that I don't want PETA folks getting on me, but she says there's like 1,000 ways to skin a cat. I mean, that sounds really brutal,
Yeah.
right? But it is. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do stuff, man. I mean, and it doesn't take a whole lot of money, right? But you just gotta, if your mind is truly set to, to figuring it out and getting to there, wherever you determine there is, I mean, whether it's, social media, whether it's, there used to be a time when, people would go out and it was like, okay, I need a commercial on television. Right. Or I need to have a big banner on the side of a bus or something like that. But there's so many different things that you can do right now to kind of get that message out on whatever it is that you're doing. And again, and then there's that, there's being persistent, consistent, all those tenets, right? Just that you have to do, and a lot of trial and error, and and listening, talking to people like yourself that can give you some things to to try, but just because it worked for one company doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But I mean, so you just gotta, if you're committed to getting to there, right? It's kind of like that again. You're locked in this room. It's kind of like the Rubik cube, and you're gonna, you're not gonna, I remember that, Eric, as a kid, man. You had a Rubik cube, and you see some kids, it's done. I'm sitting here
So
like,
fast.
I'm like this, and got almost carpal tunnel working on that for a couple of days, trying to figure out how to do it. But I mean, you're gonna get it done. I mean, you just got, there's no other option. So. Yeah, so just you got to figure out, what is going to be the way to, to get to there in your business.
That's good.
Awesome. Figure out what's the way that's going to get you there or get to there. Write that down. So my piece for this is just the value of self-awareness, right? I listened to Tyler, and he said that, you need to be asking these questions like, where am I the bottleneck? And it sounds great, Tyler. That sounds so simple that, oh yeah, okay, yep, that's all I need to do. But that's hard. Like I've in the beginning, I mentioned that I've done over 28,000 coaching sessions. I've never had an entrepreneur say, that was stuck say, hey, Eric, you know what? I'm the problem.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's me. I'm the
Hmm.
bottleneck. No. Now, what I
Yeah.
have heard is, oh yeah, the economy. It's
Sure.
person in the White House. It's no one has ever told me it was them.
Hmm.
And so I think for you to really operate in that, it requires a level of self awareness, and I
Hmm.
think you have to start with yourself, right? In any type
Yeah.
of relationship, you need to, instead of saying, okay, what does Ted need to do? What do I need to do? Maybe I'll get a better response from Ted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think, big takeaway, write this down. Self-awareness is your key to success.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like early on, I spent a fair amount of time understanding what I could actually control versus what I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And reality is like your example with relationship with Ted or friendship with Ted. Like I can't control Ted's response to anything. I can't control what he's good at, what he wants to do. I can't, but I can control me
Exactly.
and how I choose to communicate or respond or interact. And am I perfect? Absolutely not. But at least as far as what you focus on or work on. So I think you're totally right, Erica. You framed it and set it up and with great kind of wording. But I think you're right. I think that self awareness piece is something to dig in, which is kind of a little bit not normal for, hey, read a whatever professional development book or a career book. That's not usually what people approach. But at the same standpoint, I think it's pretty important from it, growing your career and stuff. So it's good.
Yeah, because I think you'll get unstuck much faster if you
Mm,
start looking in the mirror instead of looking outside the window
yeah,
uh, at what the problem might be.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh, for sure. It's good.
well, awesome. Well, Tyler, you've given us a lot to digest and think about, and you've shared some great information with us. How can the people best connect with you?
Two spots. One is check out our company website, loanefircreative.com. So LONEFIR, like the tree, creative.com. And then the other is just, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And so just search my first and last name. You'll probably find the funny looking smiling guy with a lot of hair, and that's me. So I love talking to people on LinkedIn. I think it's a really fun place to interact and learn from people. And
Absolutely.
people ask questions and that kind of stuff. And so please don't hesitate to reach out.
Fantastic. All right. So I told y'all this is not your everyday podcast. This has been an amazing episode of the 30-minute hour podcast. Don't forget that you can go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of those places where you can consume content and check us out. And make sure you subscribe as well. All right. That's our time for this week's episode. Ted?
Eric, we have something to share.
Oh man, that's right. So I am happy to report that we have been selected as finalists. There's a company called Inspire You, and we have been nominated as finalists for Podcast of the Year, the 30-minute hour. And we just want to thank you, our listeners and our watchers, for voting for us, for following us for these past 4 years. So the voting, and we'll certainly put the link in the show notes, but you can vote between now and July 1st. And if we have the most votes, we can win this award of Podcast of the Year. So we thank you for all of your support.
And I think I was asking you earlier, Eric, is there any limitation to how many times they can vote?
Yeah, so I would say vote. Just keep voting. That's
Until it
don't
stops you.
stop at one time.
Yeah.
Just shameless plug from Ted. I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler was telling me, on American Idol, they be like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
right.
why not? If you feel like voting once or 1,200 times, but
Exactly.
please do. We appreciate it.
We would definitely appreciate if you voted 1,200 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Congrats, guys. That's a big deal.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Growing a
you.
podcast is a lot of hard work, and having to put up with people like me as well. So,
Oh, great guests like you make it easy to do. So we appreciate you.
Awesome.
No, we
for
definitely
sure.
appreciate you for sure.
It's
All
fun to be a
right.
part of it. Thanks for having me.
Well, fantastic. So that is our time for this week. And until next time, have a great one.